And welcome back. You're on the third and final question for our topic on stereotypes, which we will start with Deanna on this one. Which stereotype is the most offensive towards black people to you, and why?
I think, speaking as a black woman, I think the most offensive stereotype to me is that we're portrayed as being bitter and having extreme attitude problems. And I think that's most offensive to me, not only because it's portrayed by other races to seemingly all black women, but also within our own race to black women. I know that the stereotype reason why a lot of black men won't date black women is because we're all bitter and that we all have attitude problems and that we're extra difficult to have a relationship with. And I don't think that's necessarily all true. I think that because we're portrayed that way, when we get angry, when we have brokenness, and when we have problems, that we're automatically lumped in that stereotype, too difficult to deal with, too difficult to date, and that you just use that as an excuse to move on. And I think that black women do go through a lot of trials and tribulations and do have some extra baggage that because we're black and because we're women, and we have all of those things that are put upon us, we do have that may make us, bitter or maybe make us angry at times. That stereotype being portrayed to all black women when we have those types of problems offends me and it greatly upsets me. And that even when we were joking around, when I tend to get angry or passionate about something, I'm automatically attributed to having that attitude and that I'm angry all the time. Yeah, I'm passionate about things, but that doesn't necessarily make me any more angry than any other type of woman. I think that all women have issues and problems and baggage.
Amen.
And brokenness, and that black women don't have it any more than any other type of woman. We're just portrayed that we do. So that's one of the most things that are most offensive to me.
Whichever one of you wants to jump in next.
I'm just gonna go right ahead. And that really, really frustrates me as well. As well as, and you had mentioned it earlier, the gold digging aspect of a woman, like, oh, black women date men for money or we use them for money and it's all about that. And that's not true. And then the whole, independent black woman thing. So, if we're not a gold digger, we have to be that strong, independent black woman type thing. It's never a normal relationship where, maybe...
You just can't be a woman.
Right. We have to be that either she's a gold digger or she doesn't need men for anything but, certain things. So, because I actually had a conversation when I was in school with African-American men who date outside the race. And I said, okay, well, me and a friend, we talked to them about it. We said, let's actually have a decent conversation to figure out why do you do it? Is it love? And if it's love, that's fine. But if it's any other reason, let's talk about it. And they said it's because you're loud, you're ghetto, we can't control you, or we can't talk to you without you being this and that. And I said, well, during this whole conversation, did I act any of how you said? And they were like, no. So I'm like, so you automatically dismiss every black woman because you've seen a couple of black women act that way.
To their defense, I've had this conversation. I think every black man has had this conversation with a black woman at some point. Except for Greg. Women love Greg. Anyway, so but in all honesty, like I would say that a few, and it's like any stereotype, a few people can ruin it for everybody. And I'm almost positive that this guy probably dated a black woman before who happened to be every stereotype that he labeled to every other black woman, which is why it fits right into this.
Okay, but what about? But I asked him also, what if he dated another race and she acted all those things, and he dismissed that, saying, "Oh, they don't, or they just get angry sometimes, and that's it."
So you're saying that it's the forward thought of the stereotype itself that already portrays it into
like she was saying, if you get angry one time, oh, that's it. She's that angry black woman. But if another woman of a race gets angry, oh, what's the problem? Let's work it out. It's like, are you serious?
I think that's what frustrates me the most, is that when we fit one of those stereotypes, whenever we do maybe happen to fit it because we're actually angry, you know, all of a sudden we're just thrown away as just this, and no one wants to, you know, be our friend anymore, or wants to work with us anymore. I think that's extreme. But
I'm gonna let Greg. Hey, I'm gonna let Greg.
Let me chime in on this first. First off, your friend or whatever, he's just weak. Plain and simple. He's weak. If he can't deal with the attitudes of y'all are gonna take offense to this, but I'm gonna say it regardless.
Nice.
All women are half crazy for the most part. Y'all all have
I don't
problems.
think that's a stereotype.
No. Y'all all have problems. It doesn't matter what color, what race, what creed. All women are somewhat a little crazy. Just like all dudes are somewhat. Now we're insensitive and we're pricks. It's just something. It's just something that you got to get to deal with.
That's also not a stereotype.
It's not a stereotype. We're all insensitive pricks for the most part, and all of y'all are somewhat crazy because we don't understand what y'all want most of the time. So that dude using that black woman excuse as an attitude and blah blah blah, he's just weak. Forget about
that
it.
was great what you just did.
Yeah. You don't want to be a dude like that anyway. He's soft.
I think we just, you know, highlight some things about gender stereotypes, which is a different, and how it's different than black stereotypes. And a lot of times I'm gonna highlight that we try to separate it by race or class, which we haven't really touched, or like, you know, gender, and that they're all intertwined.
It's all the same.
It's all intertwined, and it's hard to break out one without highlighting another, which is probably why I try to highlight things that, you know.
And I'm glad you looked at the woman's
well.
perspective, because of course, I'm not a woman.
The thing that I hate most is that we're all portrayed as dummies.
Yes.
In the beginning, from jump. That is a hard, like if you go, and it starts with you being young. So if you go straight into school with the expectations of you already being looked at as a dummy, that's a hard rock to get up from under.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, you have to prove you're a moron to call me you a moron. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Till then, you know, it should all be even, especially with children and such. But it starts at such a young age. Like even prime example, my brother over here, TJ, when he was young, what was it, like 3rd grade or something like that? They just automatically put this dude in slow classes. They didn't know nothing. They had no tests. They just threw him in slow classes. He came to a couple of tests and they're like, wait a minute, this kid's a damn genius. Maybe we were wrong. And between his test scores and our parents, thank God that we have great parents.
Active parents.
Yeah, active parents pushing the fact like, hey, our kid's no dummy, put him up in here. But if they had not spoke up and this man did not have a little bit of pride, he could be a bum right now.
Yeah,
he could be a stereotype.
Exactly.
And all that derives from the fact that he came into a situation where they automatically assumed he was dumb based on nothing more than his skin. That's the most annoying, and that falls across for every person of every race. And even with other races, it falls into different categories. There could be a Oriental kid. They just automatically assume he's good at math. Just automatically assume he's great.
At the violin.
Yeah, or just any black dude. They just automatically assume he's going to be on the football team or basketball team or whatever. It's just like those kinds of things that upset me because it's putting someone behind before they even get a chance to start.
Greg, I think that's what I was going to say about they assume that black people are inferior but uneducated, or that we cannot be educated, when some of the best scholars, like W.E.B. Du Bois, he was the first actually real sociologist. Like, he really was one of the founders of sociology, but when you go and learn about the history of sociology, his name's not really brought up. And that's, of course, attributed to the highly racist society of that time. But black people, that they are automatically assumed to be uneducated, and when you do prove that you can be educated and that you are educated, it's like, oh. Like, when I tell people that I went to UVA, and the first comment I get back is like, oh wow, that's a really good school. Part of me is like, okay, well, I guess they're saying, oh, or I guess they think I'm smart, but is there a racial element that in that when they're saying that. It's like, oh my gosh, you know, a black person
surprised.
when, yeah, surprised that a black person could go to UVA and that can graduate from UVA. And also UVA's, you know, still is a good school, but it's not like necessarily Ivy League. But, you know, just when you go to certain places and, you know, will people even assume that I'm educated? You know, certain areas where I'm just lumped in with other, you know, with a lot of black people, they assume that necessarily that I'm not educated. And I think that's something that's
and the fact that that even has to go across your mind already highlights the racial problems I think that we have in America. All right. With all that said, we're going to go to the website. Couch, what do you got from the website?
Okay, question number 3. Which stereotype is the most offensive toward black people to you and why? The third response comes from Ken. And Ken actually lists the 2 that he finds most offensive. The first one says uncontrolled sexuality is the most offensive to me. The second one on his list is dependent on the government 150 years after slavery. We replace one master with another. Back to you.
What do you guys think of what Ken said? I think they're similar to actually what's already been said in here. Although under some of them were under different questions, it's kind of, it all bleeds together. So anyway, with that being said, I'll go ahead and plug the website one more time, www.blackadvancement.com. I ask you guys to look at the topics, and remember, this is something where it's interactive. So that means that if we have a section under there, you guys can also write in and suggest topics to us. As you can see, we have 2 young ladies here that are into the gender part of it. We'd love for them to write in and be able to say, hey, why don't you do something on black women, something specifically for that. So that would be excellent. Donations also, you guys can go to our donations page. Our donations page is different from a lot of other nonprofits because it actually shows where our money goes and when we spend it and how much is coming in. So that's nice. And also people you should know, there's Charlotte E. Ray was the one that we want to highlight today. Do you know who she is? If not, go to Black People You Should Know and check it out on our website. With all that said, we'll be back with my take, and everybody's going to sit here and listen because I'm the man. Everybody, welcome back, and now we're on the My Take section where I get to talk without anybody interrupting me. I'm looking at you. Anyway, so let me go through these one by one. Are black people accurately stereotyped? I think that the one from the website I agree with the most. I think that there's a lot of truth said in jest, but the biggest problem is that although that might be true for a small section of people, the need to run away, to take that one thing and run and throw it over everybody is the thing that offends me kind of the most with that. Because it's kind of like saying, you know, if these certain pocket of teenagers robbed and hit somebody over the head, that I'm going to do it. It's like I'm not associated with those teenagers just because they're black. That doesn't mean that I'm the same as that. But I think that happens far too often with black people as far as being stereotyped. So there are people like that who do that of every race, including black people, but not every other race is painted the same way as black people are with such a broad brush. Question number 2, which stereotype about black people is least accurate to you? And I would say the one that's least accurate to me personally is that we're all dangerous. Not all of us have harm or are out to do any harm. I would almost say that we're the exact opposite. I mean, at least in my experiences, a black person of every ilk and every class has been, from my own personal experience, has been much more generous and less judgmental than some other races that I've seen in the same situations, in similar situations. So that's only speaking from my own life experience. Yours is probably different. Race is incredibly personal. Anyway, question number 3, which stereotype is most offensive towards black people to you and why? I would also agree with Greg. It's that we're all dumb. And just to piggyback off of something that he said, and this is bleeding into other topics, but everything is related and relative. So one of the things that's very discouraging is when they judge you from the beginning, and I think that this all has to do a little bit with integration, because this is my own personal belief. I believe that when we were in our own section, when we had our own teachers that we saw at Sunday school as well as everywhere else, and we lived down the street from them and everything else like that these people generally cared whether we learned or not. They generally cared whether we succeeded or not. And yeah, that would lead to you getting in more trouble and getting spanked by your neighbor, and then spanked by your mom, and then spanked by your dad when you got home or whatever, what have you. But I think that the fact that people generally cared back then when they had a lot less, a lot of those people are like the greatest, that's like the greatest generation ever, like in American history, as far as the way I look at it. But then you have people now where if you put your kid into a class, that teacher, that's just another name, that's just another kid for that year, and they integrate it and they don't have any connection to them. and the only thing that they know about them are the stereotypes that are out there in front of them, saying that they're a threat and they're this and they're that, and all it takes is for the kid to act out once and act differently from the way that they can like, and I don't want to stereotype, but a white female teacher can identify with a white female student a lot easier than she can identify with Rashad. You know what I mean? Like, it's just easy. That's just how it is. I mean, she doesn't know anything about him. The way that he reacts to a disappointment isn't the same as the way as Emily does. And because of that, she's going to treat him differently. And when you start treating people differently and you already have them in a certain box, bad things can happen for a long time. So anyway, that's my take on it. The next topic we'll be talking about is acting black. That's also under the self-hatred section. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and go to Black Advancement, which is www.blackadvancement.com, and comment on any and all topics that you find interesting and intriguing. Black people, advance.